Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. Tyranids video today, rate it or hate it. This time we're looking at the winged Hive Tyrant from the Tyranids Codex. We're of course going to go through the data card, go through my personal tactics, and at the end of the video we're going to rate it or hate it. No in between, it is cutthroat. Some of you will disagree, some of you will agree. Put it down in the comments down below. Purely going on my meta, up against the factions I play regularly. I don't play against all the factions, so I don't have that privilege of testing it out against various different combinations and factions, but I can only give you my experience. Anyway, let's get on with the winged Hive Tyrant. So, let's look at the datasheet to begin. It's on a 60mm base, although this thing is quite a large model. It's got quite a large wingspan, so it's quite easy to gain line of sight on it. Got to be careful on that one. Keywords, there's quite a lot of keywords to go through. It's a monster, it's a character for the enhancement, it's a psyker, it's got fly, synapse as well, synapse is in there, Vanguard Invader if you're playing the Vanguard Onslaught detachment, we'll talk about that later on, and it's a Hive Tyrant as well, and this model will come for 210 points. Now I'm going to give you a little spoiler, I think that's very expensive. We'll get onto that sort of towards the end of this video. So let's jump into those statistics. We've got a movement of 12 inches, which is lovely. 12 inches is brilliant. Much quicker than the Hive Tyrant on foot, which is only moving 8 inches. So you've got that advantage there. Toughness 9. For a monster is a little bit lackluster, especially when you're comparing it to like the Malceptor and things like that. Their toughness, I think it's toughness 11, is it? The Malceptor? Let's have a little check, just in case. Malceptor was toughness 11. I got something right for once. Malceptor also has 14 wounds. This thing's only got 10. However, it's got a 2+ armor with a 4+ invulnerable save. 2+ 4+ is always nice, we can't complain about that. Leadership 7 with synapse, okay. And OC only 3. A little bit annoying that we've got only OC 3 when we're using the speed and one of the core abilities, Deep Strike, we'll talk about that in a moment. When you're using those kind of combinations and you've only got OC 3 when you're jumping on objectives, a little bit lackluster if I'm honest with you. But we'll talk about that as well in a moment. Now the weapons it comes stock with is the monstrous bone sword and lash whip, as well as the tyrant talons. Oddly, you can't actually use the bone sword and lash whip with the tyrant talons because the tyrant talons are not extra attacks. So when you're keeping that combination, it's kind of pointless. You're not going to be using the tyrant talons because you get more attacks with the bone sword and lash whip. It's also got a better strength and better damage and twin linked. Again, we'll get onto that in a moment. I am kind of jumping the gun as always. So in fact, let's just get into that. The monstrous bone sword and lash whip. So it's 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 8 minus 2 AP, 3 damage, twin linked. So you're re-rolling all your wound rolls. Now you're hitting on 2s, that's an average of 5 hits. Strength 9, we know that problem by now. I don't want to keep regurgitating the same issue with Tyranids, but strength 9 is kind of a ceiling for a lot of the units, a lot of the bigger stuff in this codex, annoyingly. Minus 2 is reasonable, it could be better. It could have been minus 3 potentially, but it is twin linked on the wounds department, I suppose. Does help. And damage 3. Damage 3 is okay, kind of means it's going to be going after light monsters and vehicles and heavy infantry. Or beasts and swarms and cavalry and all that. Not cavalry, I always get that wrong. Mounted, it's 10th edition, mounted. It's a reasonable weapon, I'm not going to take it away from it. It's a reasonable weapon, but it's annoying that you can't actually use the Tyrant Talons with this weapon. Now I'm going to go through those Talons anyway, because there are of course combinations that you can swap out. The Tyrant Talons are basically 5 attacks that hit on 2s. They're only strength 9, minus 2 AP, 2 damage. So now you've gone from the light monsters and vehicles right down to basically infantry, swarm, beast and mounted. You're not really going after anything that's toughness 8 or more really, so it's only the smaller stuff on foot. Now we've got the options here of swapping out the bone sword and lash whip for one of the following, so either it's a heavy venom cannon, a strangled thorn cannon, or the monstrous scything talons. Now I'm going to go with the monstrous scything talons first, even though it's the last bullet point, the last option. And the reason I want to go with this first is because it's got the extra attacks keyword associated with the weapon. So what this means is you can, even though you're going to lose your bone sword and lash whip, you're now going to be using your tyrant talons, but because the monstrous scything talons are extra attacks, you'll be also using them as well. Now they've got the exact same stat line as the Tyrant Talons, but it's only 4 attacks, not 5. So you'll be getting a total of 9 attacks. Could you just roll them all at the same time? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. You got 5 on one, 4 on the other. Both strength 7, minus 2 AP do damage, and you're hitting on 2s. That's one combination you could choose. Now you could take that Bone Sword and Lash Whip out and instead take one of the ranged weapons, which would then leave the Tyrant Talons to be your main melee weapon. So you've still got some melee output, but not as good as the Monstrous Bone Sword and Lash Whip. So the Heavy Venom Cannon has Blast. It has got 36-inch range, which is reasonable range, decent range. Only D3 attacks, hit on 2s again, strength 9, minus 2 AP, 3 damage. So the same statistics as the Monstrous Bone Sword and Lash Whip, except you're getting D3 attacks rather than 6 attacks, but you do have Blast. So if you're firing at 5 models, you get an extra shot, 10 models, an extra 2 shots, and so on. I kind of question why Blast would come into effect when you've got Strength 9. I mean, maybe against Toughness 4, but you don't need Strength 9 for Toughness 4. Strength 8 would be enough. I mean, Strength 9 just gives it a little bit of an extra utility, I suppose. But the Blast thing is weird, and it's also got restrictions with Blast. You can't fire it into within engagement range. So you're kind of restricted with Blast in some aspects and not with others. The other alternative option is the Strangle Thorn Cannon, which also has Blast. 36-inch range again, D6 plus 1. So slightly more attacks on average there. I mean, you're going to get a minimum of 2, whereas the Heavy Venom Cannon was an average of 2. This is a minimum of 2 here. Hit on 2, strength 7, only minus 1 AP and only 2 damage this time. More attacks, again it has Blast. Probably more fitting for the strength 7 weapon because you're likely going up against infantry now with only 2 damage. And Blast kind of goes hand in hand in that, because if you're going up against a unit of 5, maybe it's, I don't know, 5 Terminators, you're going to get an extra shot. I mean, I've got an issue with the range of both weapons. The range is really good, that's not the issue. The issue I've got is the winged Hive Tyrant has obviously got the wings, it's moving 12 inches, it's got Deep Strike, which we'll go over in a moment. If you don't really need the 36-inch range necessarily. If it was a Hive Tyrant on foot, you could then say, yeah, maybe it needs the range, it takes its time to get into engagement range and things like that, so it needs 36 inches of range. The Winged Tyrant doesn't necessarily need it. So it's a bit of an oddball weapon selection or combination that you could be selecting from. I'm not keen on it. What would I select? What would I select? I mean, that's a struggle in itself, because if you do keep the Monstrous Bone Sword and Lash Whip, that's a decent weapon, it's the best weapon that it's got, but then you literally can't be using the Tyrant Talons. You literally just may as well take it off the datasheet. You can't use it. So it's, by removing the Monstrous Bone Sword and Lash Whip, you're retaining some melee output and then you're gaining some range output as well. So you kind of, it's annoying. You're taking something away just to get something more. And it's your best weapon as well. So what do? Do you keep the Bone Sword and Lash Whip or not? I don't know. We'll see when we get to the tactics. I'll have another think about it. Ability wise, you've got Deadly Demise D3, so if it does go down on a 6 plus, or on a 6 rather, it's going to be causing D3 mortal wounds to units within 6 inches. That's not so bad. It's also got Deep Strike, which is good. We like Deep Strike, especially on a model that's got 12-inch movement. It can come in, do its thing, and move on the next turn, and so on. It's good. It's good. Shadow in the Warp, it's also got, as well as Synapse. So it is one of your Shadow in the Warp characters, so you can apply that once per battle. And Synapse, of course, because we've seen it from the keywords, it's got the Synapse keywords, so therefore anything within 6 inches will have Synapse for their leadership. Now the 2 unique abilities, well, I say unique, obviously the Hive Tyrant has one of these, but unique to a certain degree. Will of the Hive Mind, so once per turn, one friendly Tyranids unit within 12 inches of one or more of these winged Hive Tyrants, they get to basically use a stratagem for free. Now it will only be a battle tactic stratagem, it won't be any old stratagem, it has to be battle tactic, because they confirmed that it wasn't in the recent rules commentary, it was a few rules commentaries or balanced data slate things, it was quite a long time ago in fact now, so we should be used to that. And you can use the stratagem even if you've already used it this phase as well, which can be quite cool for just doubling up on a certain stratagem in a particular battle round. Now, Paroxysm is a psychic attack or psychic power ability at the start of the fight phase, so that could be your fight phase, it could be your opponent's fight phase. You select one enemy unit within 12 inches and visible. You roll a d6. On a 1, unfortunately, your Hive Tyrant is going to be taking d3 more wounds. On a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, basically that unit that you've targeted within 12 inches, it's a -1 to all their attacks. So if one model's got 4 attacks, it's now got 3 attacks, and that will apply to the entire unit's models. So that could be really good to debuff an ongoing fight, or a brand new fight. Maybe you've got into engagement range with your units, and you don't want to get hit back too hard, you're going to take away some attacks. And it also could apply to your opponent's fight phase. If they've charged your guides, or your bugs, you're going to be debuffing those units. So it's a decent ability for debuffing enemy units. Right, so that is the data card. Let's move on to my tactics. So first of all, let's talk about the role that the Winged Hive Tyrant has got, because it's not straightforward. In my opinion, it's a bit of a forward-thinking monster. It's entering from reserve using Deep Strike. You're going to be applying pressure within a key location ideally, but I prefer to have it buffing a unit up it's following a unit up that's maybe making a charge move, because you've got a few things to do there. You can be buffing with the stratagem for free with the Will of the Hive Mind, and also the Paroxysm debuff. If it's going to get into an engagement range, or another unit's going to get into engagement range, you're going to be debuffing that unit so it can't hit back as hard. So it's not necessarily going to be in the actual fight. It could be at a distance within 12 inches to be doing that buff and debuff to help, to assist with that fight. Now it could also get stuck into that fight. I mean, it's got reasonable damage output against certain units, not against the big stuff of course, with Strength 9 as a best weapon there. I mean, they're actually capped, Strength 9 and Strength 7. Without any buffs to those attacks, sometimes you get +1s to wound and things like that, but without any buffs, yeah, you're sticking to light vehicles at best. So it is better to stay behind if it doesn't need to go in. What I also like about the Hive Tyrant with the Winged Hive Tyrant is the 12-inch move with Fly, which is a reason to take it over the standard Hive Tyrant, because that Hive Tyrant is only moving 8 inches and doesn't have Deep Strike and doesn't have Fly. So you can be using that Winged Hive Tyrant for scoring potentially. Now that is quite an expensive scoring model, to be honest with you. What was it, 210 points? You're probably better off getting your gargoyles out, which are quick. They can also move after shooting from Deep Strike as well, OC2 per model, whereas this Hive Tyrant is OC3, and that's 210 points OC3, that's it. So scoring, maybe not so much for actually gaining objectives, but it could be just using things like engage on all fronts. We've got alternatives though, that's the problem I've got here. We have got alternatives for virtually every role you try and give the Winged Hive Tyrant. There's something else that can do it better. If you want to use it to kill, you've got better options. You've got the Swarm Lord, you've got Malceptors, you've got Old One Eye with Carnifexes. There's loads of other killer units that can do the killing. If you want to use it for scoring, again, you've got Gargoyles, you've got lots of cheaper options that can do that kind of stuff. Gaining objectives, or with OC, you can use little bugs, they can do it. OC is pretty decent. So with his OC3, he's not going to really be doing it anyway. Now let's talk about a detachment for a moment. Let's come out of the negatives for a moment. For me, if I'm using the Winged Tyranid, I keep saying Winged Tyranid Prime, it's a Winged Hive Tyrant. If I'm using the Winged Hive Tyrant, you're looking no further than the Vanguard Onslaught detachment. Now that detachment is useful because, of course, the Winged Hive Tyrant has got the Vanguard, the Invader keyword. So it can apply to the stratagems as well as the enhancements. And the detachment roll as well, of course, which you can advance and still charge if you wanted to do so. Now, I just want to name a few enhancements here and options with the stratagems as well. Chameleonic for 15 points for a Vanguard Invader model only. The bearer gains stealth and the benefits of cover. That's not too bad on a model that's got a 2+4+ with stealth and the benefits of cover. That's not bad at all. You've also got the Stalker enhancement for 10 points. So at the start of the battle round, you select one enemy unit, and each time the bearer makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, you add 1 to the hit roll and 1 to the wound roll. let's say you're going up against a toughness, the toughest things you can go against. You're probably wounded on a 4+ now. Let's just say it's going up against toughness 14. You would normally be wounding on 5s. You're now wounded on 4s against that toughness 14 model. Now we still have the damage 3 with the heavy venom cannon, or damage 3 with the monstrous bone sword and lash whip, which is still going to hinder it. But the +1 to hit and we don't really need the +1 to hit, but if there are any negative modifiers, it will come into play. But the +1 to wound can be quite effective. Enhancement wise, Seeded Broods is a decent option. 2 invader units can basically enter the battlefield 1 turn less than they should. So in turn 1, they can deep strike in, which is odd, but that's the way it is written. It would be effectively like as if it's turn 2, or they could be using strategic reserves in the same way as if it was turn 2. But this thing's got deep strike, so we can just deep strike turn 1. Your opponent is going to wonder about that. If you can basically tell them up front and then make them go really defensive and not want to leave their deployment zone, or you keep it up your sleeve, keep it secret, and when they do leave and you just spring it out of your sleeve and say, you know what, I can deep strike turn 1, in I go. Could be useful if you're playing like fixed secondaries and you know what you got to do. Maybe you do have to deploy teleport home or something. You could use it, again, you would just use it on something else, to be honest with you. Gargoyles are, again, another example, but you've got options. And the other one, which is Unseen Lurkers, which is probably the best stratagem that you could use from this attachment, basically gives him Lone Operative. I would argue the fact that a Lone Operative ability on a unit that's deep striking, probably just over 9 inches away from enemy models, you want to make sure you do your deep strike right. If you're going nearby shooter units, they're still going to be able to fire, so you just got to make sure you're doing it a little bit further back against those kind of models. In fact, there is one more, Invisible Hunter. Totally forgot about this one. End of your opponent's fight phase, you pull 2 Vanguard invading units off and place them into strategic reserves. I love this kind of stuff. Kind of feels like Necrons with the Hypercrypt Legion, where you can hyperphase them off, or Chaos Demons, which I come up against quite often. They can do their Realm of Chaos ability and they can come off at the end of the turn and come back in straight away in their own turn. Raveners, in fact, from the Tyranids Codex can also do that naturally. Okay, so let's get on to this rate it or hate it for the Winged Hive Tyrant. I mean, it's another overpriced model in the Codex in my opinion. 210 feels way too much for what it's capable of doing. And I mean, as you guys know, my main faction is Necrons, and for 255 points, I can get a Catan Shard of the Nightbringer. Everyone is afraid of the Nightbringer. And what's that? 45 points more than the Winged Hive Tyrant. I mean, even if you're going back into the Tyranids Codex, you can look at, say, Old One Eye with a single Carnifex is 265. I know that's a little bit more, but you're going to get a lot more output from it. You could get 6 Zone Throats for 220. I mean, there's actually so many better options for all the roles it can do. We already mentioned a few times in the video, you've got Gargoyles you can do stuff with. Maybe it's Gene Stealers, the Malceptor, even the Hive Tyrant on foot, which is 235. So the Hive Tyrant on foot is actually a bit more expensive. But something to note with the Hive Tyrant on foot is the Tyrant Guard. They can't go with the Winged Hive Tyrant. They can only go with the Swarm Lord, the Hive Tyrant, as well as the Neuro Tyrant. So they can't actually go with the Winged Hive Tyrant, unfortunately. So that's yet another negative point for this model. But in terms of rate it or hate it, I'm just going to have to throw this out there. I hate it. Can't really say that I like it. There's just better options, gargoyles, and so on.